your brain is for thinking, and thinking is an action. Welcome back to Consultant's Corner. I'm Rebecca Brizi. This is my corner. I am a consultant. Today's video is a riff on the fabulous quote by Mark Vardy, a productivity coach, and he says, "Your mind was meant to be a factory, not a warehouse." The brain is for thinking, and thinking is where things are happening, where you're creating something new. It's not where you just take information and store it and keep it for later use. That is a warehouse. A big part of what I consult on is having systems and procedures in place. And the purpose of a good operational system for how you do things is to free up the brain to focus on the thinking side, not the remembering side. If the brain is occupied by remembering what it has to do next, you're using the brain as a warehouse, a place of storage where you go and filter through the files to remember the thing that you have to do. If you have a system for knowing what the thing that you have to do is, then you're freeing up the brain to be creating something new every time, to always be thinking about the best way to do this for this given circumstance, to be thinking about personalization, to be thinking about innovation, to being creative, even within a system. One of the biggest objections I see to having procedures in place is that they are stifling. If they're stifling, then they're being done incorrectly. A good system does not lock the brain in. A good system frees up the brain. Where does this come into the work of the freelance consultant? Have a system. All the more so because you are on your own and you don't get the voices of your colleagues or your employees to fill in those innovation gaps. It's all on you. What does that mean for your everyday work? Rule number one is the acceptance of the conceptual truth that the brain must be freed up for thinking. Start to incorporate this idea that your brain is not a storage space. Work against memorization. There are things that you will memorize, and there are things that it is good to memorize. The point is you shouldn't be trying to memorize everything you do in your work. I would argue that you shouldn't be trying to memorize everything at all. Knowledge is not about the things that you automatically know, but it's about knowing how to get the information and then utilize it. Your skill is in the application of the information and the application of the knowledge, not about storing it in your brain. And that's true for every level at which you work. The level of your expertise, the level of your day-to-day tasks, everything in between. Get used to the idea that your brain is not a warehouse and start to notice the moments when you're treating it as a warehouse, as a storage facility, instead of treating it as a factory, the place where you're creating new things. Which leads us to point number two, which is capture. Capture information. All the information. You have to know what information is relevant. In a past video on productivity, I talked about having workspaces where you keep and store the relevant information. For those who are not used to capturing information in a systematic way, the biggest hurdle at first is often knowing what to capture. You don't need to capture all the information. You need to start to discern what is relevant for the future. My client wore yellow shoes today. Is that relevant or not? Well, it depends. To the work of consulting, possibly not, depending on whether consulting has anything to do with the color of his shoes or his apparel. But is there a personality trick in there? Does the fact that your client wore yellow shoes denote a change in mood? Does it turn out that yellow is his favorite color and you want to remember that when you sent him a birthday card or a recognition gift? You need to capture the information that is going to serve you well in the medium term, in the long term, in the ongoing momentum of your work. Information about clients, information about your expertise, what you are learning, information about the environment, information about your own tasks as well. What stage you are, what the milestones are, what needs to happen next, how what happened before might influence or change what needs to happen next. When in doubt, go ahead and capture everything and start to train yourself to cut away the parts that are redundant or are irrelevant. The idea is, however, don't think that you're going to remember the things. Capture them somewhere in your systems. I have one client who captures everything in handwritten notebooks, and he's got stacks of those. And it drives me crazy when I see it. But it works for him. He can actually say, oh, the meeting I had in March of 2018, and can pull out the third notebook and knows roughly where those notes are. For some reason, that works for him. It clicks in his brain. Find the system that works for you to capture that information and make it accessible to you for the future. And what's the point of capture? Well, it takes us to point number three, which is having systems in place. A system for capturing information, a system for everything you do, from the most mundane, shall we say, the most task-driven, to the most strategic. how you make decisions for your business, how you serve your clients. Now, what do I mean by having a system in place for strategic work? I try to make sure that my consultancy is always evolving, the material on which I'm consulting, that I'm always learning new things, that I'm always improving how I interact with clients, whether it's the material itself, whether it's how I share it, how I guide my clients, how I train them, whether it's how I give them the final deliverable. In my project management system, there is a space for capture of ideas and information for my consultancy, for the work that I do as a consultant. Every new idea has to go into that capture space, and the way it's set up is with titles and tags and next steps, so that every time I add an idea, I have to think to myself, where does this go? What is this relevant to? How does it spur action? I have all the areas in there that I need to turn an idea into an improvement in my consulting. What you're seeing is that I have a system for capturing those ideas. I have a system for how I prepare for meetings. I have a system for how I follow up meetings. I have a system for how I deliver services to clients. I just have a system for all the things. Everything that you do repeatedly that happens more than once or twice should have a system in it. What does this mean for your homework? Build systems for everything. All right, that's an ongoing process. What you can start with, though, is making a list of all those things that you do repeatedly. What I would say is, over the next week, keep a notepad, real or virtual, and build a checklist of all those things that you say, this is something I do all the time. This is something I do every time that I'm in this given situation. You'll notice how often that actually occurs, how many repeatable actions or processes we go through in our day-to-day work. Build that list. That's your homework for this video. In the next video, we'll talk about how to make the improvements based on that list. So I'm leaving you with that for now. Keep working, my creative and fabulous consultants. And as always, for more about being a freelance consultant, check out the link to my courses that you will find in the description of the video. I'm on several platforms with online courses on how to be a freelance consultant, how to run better meetings that's focused on internal meetings, but you can learn something for your client meetings as well, and how to make good decisions, frameworks for decision making. And of course, my free course on Udemy on how to work from home. That's it for me for now. I will see you back here at the next video. Bye now.